Can you believe the original North American version of Dragon Quest VIII was released in 2005? It was one of my favorite games ever released on the PlayStation 2 and remains one of my favorite role-playing games of all time. I was utterly shocked when Nintendo announced that not only was Dragon Quest VII going to be releasing on the 3DS in North America, but then shortly afterwards, Dragon Quest VIII would follow. That was like a dream come true for a hardcore Dragon Quest fan such as myself. When I finally got my hands on this version, I couldn't be more pleased. I had a few shortcomings that we'll talk about shortly, but overall, this is a phenomenal port of one of the very best games ever made. In total, I spent about 91 hours with this game. I finished off absolutely everything you can do, and I gotta admit, I'm a little sad that it's all over. Next in line is this year's Japanese release of Dragon Quest XI on both the 3DS and the PlayStation 4, and potentially the Switch. I cannot wait. Now before we begin, fundamentally, this is the same game that was released on the PlayStation 2. It's a sweeping and beautiful RPG that features an incredible storyline about a king and his daughter who have been transformed into a monster and a horse, and this ragtag team of would-be heroes that sets out on an adventure to break the curse by defeating an evil wizard named Magus. So let's cover a few of the things that didn't quite translate over so well to the 3DS version. For starters, some of the voice acting had to be re-recorded for new lines that were added to the dialogue, so Jessica's voice actress was completely replaced, and I kinda preferred the original one. Now I might be mistaken, but it sure sounds like Magus' voice actor was replaced as well. Another nitpick I have is with the cutscenes. In this version of the game, the cutscenes don't just play out. It's not really a cutscene. They constantly pause, waiting for you to press the A button to continue them, which sort of breaks up the flow of the scene. Finally, there's the fact that enemies no longer appear at random, which is a good thing, meaning you can see them on the main field, which forces you to run into them in order to trigger the fight scene. The problem is that you can easily avoid the enemies, and therefore that kind of leads you to be under-leveled in a couple of instances, so just be careful of that. Now the great news is that there's a really interesting exploit that's really easy to take advantage of. So you can sort of power level, which is exactly what I did. If you stand still in the overworld and use the L and R buttons to rotate the camera around your character, enemies will reload as the camera leaves the area. So what makes this so interesting? Well, as enemies reload, think of this, you get to pick the enemy that you want to attack. So go to an area where metal slimes are and just keep rotating the camera until your metal slime pops, and boom, there you go. And you can do this over and over and over again. And this was a real lifesaver given the lack of random encounters. Now, there is a heck of a lot that's new with this particular version of the game, and I'd like to focus this review primarily on that, because I love Dragon Quest VIII, and there's so much information out there, and this review is extremely late, so I figured I'd focus on what's new. So one of the interesting new elements in the 3DS version of the game is a cool camera mode alongside something called Cameron's Codex, which is essentially quests that a character named Cameron sends you. He challenges you to take pictures of a wide assortment of things throughout the adventure and even into the post-game. And speaking of the post-game, the Dragovian Sanctuary is still featured, and as are the Dragovian Trials. Except this time around, you will not unlock the instant alchemy pot. That's unlocked at the game's onset. Why does that matter, you might ask? Well, because now alchemy is far more accessible than ever before. In the PlayStation 2 version, you had to wait a certain amount of time for the alchemy pot to stop cooking whatever recipe you happen to want. Here, you just pop in the ingredients and presto, instant new item. There are also a wide assortment of new recipes to make, 2 new playable characters, Red and Mori, and a brand new post-game dungeon called Memories Lane, which we'll discuss in just a second. So let's talk about those 2 new characters. Mori is a character you meet during your adventures who runs the monster arena. Speaking of the monster arena, there's a new rank that's introduced called Rank X, and good luck winning that one. It's extremely challenging. If you beat Rank S, which used to be the top tier, Mori will join the team and has access to claws, which are quite useful. Overall, he's a really good, well-rounded fighter, well worth looking into. Red, on the other hand, joins automatically during the later portions of the game, and is an old friend of Yangus. She has one of the absolute best moves in the whole game, known as Blade Cascade. Fully tensioned, this move can easily do thousands of damage to all enemies on screen. Her specialty is using fans, although I swapped those out pretty much right away for a liquid metal sword, and then later on for Erdrick's sword. You might be wondering how Erdrick's sword is in this game, and well, that's thanks to a brand new feature. Starting in early February 2017, you could download items every single day, and about every 2 weeks or so, one unique special item was made available to download, for a limited time. And one of those items just so happened to be Ye Olde Sword of Erdrick, which you can transform into Erdrick's sword via alchemy. Not only are there special items to download every day, but there are also more mini-medals and therefore more mini-medal rewards, as well as new costumes for the different characters. So let's tackle that Memories Lane dungeon now. This is the ultimate challenge for hardcore Dragon Quest fans. Similar to the post-game dungeons in Dragon Quest VII, this new dungeon will test the absolute hardcore players. In Memories Lane, you take on 14 of the main bosses you defeated during your playthrough of the original game. You fight one at a time, and they're not the same as before. Oh no, this time around their movesets have been set to maximum damage. No word of a lie, some of these guys can one-shot the entire party, even if you're at level 99. Yes, they truly are that strong. Your reward for defeating the 14 bosses? Well, a 15th Super Omega Secret Deluxe boss character. One of legend. One that will truly test your skills. Defeat him and you can call yourself a Dragon Quest VIII completionist. You're also awarded with an excellent accessory that doubles your damage for successfully completing Memories Lane. And as for everything else, it's just as you remembered from the original PlayStation 2 version, except slightly less polished. And why I say slightly less polished is because the North American version of Dragon Quest VIII on the PlayStation 2 featured an orchestrated soundtrack, reworked menus, and so much more. Here things are far less advanced, but considering all the new elements I just mentioned, it's still well worth looking into. The same excellent story is present, the same great gameplay, it's all here. This is a monumental game that remains one of my absolute favorite entries in the series. With lush and beautiful graphics to an incredible soundtrack, I really don't know what else I could possibly say except go pick up Dragon Quest VIII.
I am impressed. Never before has anyone overcome the full power of the Lord of the Dragovians. I am almost afraid to wonder at the true extent of your powers. I have nothing more to give you, but you are welcome to visit me whenever you wish to test your strength. It has been a great pleasure putting your strength to the test. I look forward to your next visit. Very well. I shall transport you back to the sanctuary.